when Shallon and I first got married, I was working, I like to say I was working as a photographer, but really what I was doing was taking pictures at Walmart. So I don't know if that classifies me as a photographer or not, but that's what I was doing. Any of you that have had pictures taken at Walmart, it's your judgment call. Now mine, I was good at it. I can tell you that. I had people that would call and follow me around wherever I went, because I took pride in it, and you know, I love talking to people anyway, so kind of made some friendships with people, and it got to the point where I'd kind of moved up, and I was going around helping out in troubled spots and things like that, and people would call around and try to find me. And there was one particular family that was from in Norman, and they had met me when I was working in the Norman store, and they started doing that, and I kind of built a relationship with this family. And so I was sitting there with them one day. I was selling them their pictures of their kids, you know, and we got to talking, and they said, "Have you ever thought about opening your own studio?" And I thought, well, I don't know if I can get the Walmart camera because that's the only thing I know how to take pictures on. But yeah, I mean, that'd be great. Do my own business, be my own boss. I'd love to do that. And they said, well, we'd like to talk with you about having your own business. So, you know, why don't you just come over to our house for dinner? Now, I knew these people. There was about, I don't know, 60 square feet of space that I'd ever talked to these people in, right in the Walmart portrait studio. They asked me to come to dinner. And so I talked my introverted wife into going to some stranger's house to have dinner with them and talk about the prospects of me having my own business. I was excited. I was young. I was like 20 years old. Man, I thought, man, this could set me up for life. And these people had money. I knew that because they always bought the way expensive package of pictures that nobody should buy, because there was just pictures. They could plaster every car in Walmart with pictures. They were getting so many. And so I knew they were okay off. They weren't just feeding me a line, I didn't think. And so we decided we're going to go. And so they give us the date that they want us to be at their house. And so we're like, okay. And they give us the directions. We get in our car, and I drive to their house. Immediately, I knew that something weird was happening, because when I pulled up, I knew that they were okay off, but I knew that they didn't have like 20 cars themselves. And so there were like 20 other cars in front of their house. And we parked, and I told Shallon, I don't know what's going on, but I told them I'd be here, and so I'm going to go in. And so we knock on the door, they answer, "Hey, John, how you doing?" You know, they were very friendly, just like they always were. They invited me into their house, and I walk in, and I see a group of people sitting in the living room and a whiteboard, like a dry erase board, right in front of the fireplace. And immediately I thought, I've been snookered. I've been taken. These people aren't going to help me open some photo studio. Right across the top of the whiteboard, it said, Amway. Again, if you're younger than me, you may have no clue what Amway is. If you're older than me, you know what Amway is. You've used their soap. But I looked at Shallon and I said, I'm getting us out of here as quick as I can. And so we were like right on time. And so they sit us down and they start giving this spiel about how I can make my millions selling Amway and getting other people to sell Amway. And I'm going to be making money off of those people. And it got to the first break, and magically my pager that I wore at the time just happened to go off, and I told them I had an emergency and I had to leave. And I lied. God forgave me for it, and I'm okay with that now. But it really was an emergency, because if I stayed there much longer, I was going to start talking, and it wasn't going to be friendly things I was saying. And so we left, and we went to McDonald's and got dinner and went back home, knowing that the next day I would still be at the Walmart portrait studio. It seems like everybody is trying to sell something these days. Everybody is selling something. People make millions of dollars off of other people who want to make millions of dollars, right? People, and unless you're in on the top tier of that thing, I mean, you may do okay, but you're not going to be that top tier person, because that top tier is already taken. And so those people make millions and millions of dollars off of other people. And it goes a little something like this. Hey, would you like to lose weight and live healthy? You know, I'm trying this new Advocare or Beachbody or Herbalife or Shakeology, or they got like thousands of these things. And I just happen to sell it. Would you like to buy some of that from me? How convenient. Or you think, would you like to cook like the pros? You know all those cooking shows that you see? Would you like to cook like them? Have you heard of a product called Pampered Chef? Now, I realize I'm stepping on toes this morning. My wife sold Pampered Chef. I've got every stone, tong, peeler, core, slicer thing you can imagine in my house. We had so much we were throwing stuff away. She did really good at selling it. She was really good at it. But she was really good at it because she could cook. If I could have sold it, but I was going to have to hire somebody to cook because I'm not a cook. And people weren't going to buy the stone from me when a black piece of meatloaf came out on the stone. It wasn't going to work for me, but she was good at it, and she would use these at our house and use them at church functions and places, and people would see that she had those, and she just happened to sell them, and so she would sell them some or book them a party at their house so they could get some sucker to come in thinking he was going to open a portrait studio, and instead he's buying a set of grill tongs or something. And it's awesome stuff. And we're all trying to make our way. You want to look beautiful? You want to be pretty? Like me? Not like me. Again, I couldn't sell these products, but you should try Avon or Mary Kay. Or if you want some jewelry, there's some new thing that I really not. It's Origami Owl. I see it all over Facebook and stuff, but people they're building their own necklaces. There are sweatshops that will do that for you. I don't know why you want to build your own necklace, but these people are doing this stuff and making their way. Does your house stink? You have allergies? Have you tried the new Rainbow air purifying system? If you'll just let me come to your house and just give me a few minutes, I'll just show you this, and I'm going to give you something free in return. And I just have a quota of things. You know how they do. They get in your house. Because they're your friend, I don't want strangers in my house to show me a vacuum. If I'm going to pay that much for a vacuum, it better have a steering wheel, and I better be able to ride on it. But these people, we let these people in our house because they're our friends. They want to sell us Scentsy. Just, if you can't get rid of the odor, just cover it up with something. You can hang these on your house, and they got these melty wax things you put in the wall, and you walk by it too close, and you stumble, and you hit it, and hot wax pours down your leg. It's a bonus. It's a twofer. You get a waxing, and you smell good. And in the bonus part of it, they do all this stuff to get in your house, and we let them because we have a relationship with them. And there's nothing wrong with any of those products. I've used most of those. The reason I know the names is because my wife is one of those junkies. She buys it from all of you guys. All of you guys that peddle your stuff, she buys it. And we have cabinets full of Scentsys that we'll never use. They will never all get used. We will not live long enough to melt that much wax. It will not happen. But we buy it from you because we trust you. I don't buy it from you. You don't ask me, notice, you ask her. She buys it from you because she trusts you, and she likes you, and she wants to support you, and she wants our house to try to smell good, much as she can. And so she does those things because of the relationship that you have built. See, all of those things are based on relationships. Now, you do cold calls, and you get your outside things, but if you'll notice, the majority of your customers you have some kind of relationship with because you've built trust, and you've built a rapport with them. There's nothing wrong with any of the products. But I got to thinking, what if we marketed Jesus the same way we market our Pampered Chef or our Scentsy or our Advocare or whatever the other stuff is? What if we worked so hard to get inside people's homes and to talk to them about the one who saved us from certain destruction? I mean, think about the product that we have to sell. It's not just a little melted crown that smells good. It's Jesus. It's the one who died on the cross for our sins. It's the one who was and who is to come. It's Jesus Christ. That's the product that we have. And that's what Jesus commanded us to go out and spread, to go out and to sell. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 20 through 23, Paul is talking here. And Paul, just a little background on him, Paul hated Christians. He was a Jew, And he hated Christians, and his job was to go and to persecute them, and to kill them, and to torture them, and to make them stop being Christians and go back to Judaism. That was Paul's job. But Paul had an experience one day on the road to Damascus where Jesus appeared to him as a light, and it blinded him. And he goes through this process. Long story short, he becomes the greatest evangelist of all times because he had experienced something miraculous in his life. He had experienced Jesus in a real way. And when that happened, he began to spread that news that Jesus had commanded them to do back in Matthew 28. He said, go and make disciples. And that's what Paul took that on himself. He worked even harder at discipling Christians than he did at persecuting them when that was his job. And so Paul is speaking here, and he's talking about how he had been so successful, how he had reached the people that he had reached. And when we pick it up in verse 20, it says, when I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. And when I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I too lived under that law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. And when I'm with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from that law, so I can bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. And when I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness. For I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessings. Paul was a salesman. Now, the word salesman has gotten a bad rap over the years because people have been deceitful and people have done it wrong. But to be a salesman is not a bad thing. To be somebody who convinces somebody that they need this item or this product, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, especially if it's going to help them. And you'll notice the best salespeople that are honest are normally people that use those products. I've been to Carla's house. It smells good. That's why she's good at selling Scentsy, because her house smells good. If you walked into Carla's house and it smelled like somebody had gutted a pig, it might have been a bad analogy, but if it smelled bad, and she said, would you like to buy some Scentsy? And you say, is that what you're using? Because I don't want that. But she uses the product. It does her some good, apparently, because their house smells nice. And so you buy those things. When somebody has a personal experience with something, it's a lot easier for them to sell it, and it's a lot easier for you to buy it. Because there's experience there. There's an honesty there, and you can tell when they're being honest with you. As I was going over this sermon, I got online and I was just kind of looking at some sales stuff. And I pulled up this article in Forbes magazine. If you don't know what Forbes magazine is, you might be poor like me. But Forbes magazine is just a businessman's magazine. It talks about different business strategies, different things of that nature. Forbes magazine had an article on being a salesman, on being a successful salesperson. And I was reading through those bullet points of things that they said, and I thought, man, this applies to our witness. This is exactly why do we make this so hard? If we'll just follow these steps, we'll begin to see people come to a relationship with Christ. We'll be able to, instead of selling, we'll be able to share Jesus. Because we're not trying to make money off of it, we're trying to make disciples. The disciples need to follow the same Christ that we're following. And so I want to give you just a couple of these really quick. We're going to fly through some things here. Things that I picked up out of this article and ways that we can apply them to our lives. The first thing that it said was that you have to reach out. I thought, man, those are good words. Reach out. We're always talking about outreach, about reaching out to people. Yeah, and this is the quote it had. You have to understand your audience and continue learning about them as you go along. That was a quote out of Forbes magazine. You have to understand your audience and continue learning about them as you go along. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound anything like when I was with the Jews? I lived like a Jew to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those that followed the Jewish law, I followed the Jewish law. You have to understand your audience, know where they're coming from. You have to understand the people that you're trying to reach, know where they're coming from. And you have to keep learning about them. You know how you keep learning about people? You have a relationship with those people. It's more than walking up to some stranger's door and just knocking and saying, "Do you know Jesus?" Now, I'm not knocking that. No pun intended. I'm not knocking that way of evangelism. It's successful for some people, and that's fine. But they're just getting at a short-term goal there. And a good salesperson isn't concerned so much about the first sale as they are continuing sales. And so, if you build a relationship with people, you begin to learn about them. You begin to learn about their needs, and you begin to share yourself and your own needs and your own struggles and your own successes, and they begin to share those with you, and you get to know each other. It's not just about how you reach out. It's also about when you do it. Listen to this. These are quotes from this same article. You will become their trusted advisor. They will get to know you and feel comfortable with you. This also will minimize the pressure on both ends. Think about that. People always say it's scary to share Christ with somebody. Well, how shallow is your relationship with that person then? How shallow is your relationship with that person if just sharing something that has changed your life with them is going to somehow turn them off? How shallow is that relationship? You have to build relationships with people so that they can get comfortable with you and you can get comfortable with them, and then you can share the thing that changed your life forever. It's not like I'm trying to get them to buy some baking stone. I'm trying to get them to have eternal life. It's important. This is another quote. You can't go from hello to closing the deal. There needs to be a discussion. Wouldn't it be much more effective just to share with somebody what happened to you, how Jesus changed your life, than to go up and say, "Have you found Jesus?" More than likely, they're going to say, "I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for him. Is he lost? Put it on Facebook. Somebody will find him." But when you build relationships with people, you don't just go, "Hi, my name's John. Do you know Jesus?" You get to know people genuinely. Now listen, this is the difference. A salesperson a lot of times gets to know somebody just so they can make a sale. We get to know people because we care about people. We care about people. There's a family that goes to this church now. And I was talking to the dad in that family one time. I'd known him for a while. Probably it'd been over a year. And just out of the blue, he turned to me and he said, "What do you do? I've never asked you what you do." And that is the most dreaded question for me. I hate that question. Because immediately when I say I pastor at a church in Noble, they always, you see it in their mind. They're going, "Okay, what did I say? What did I say? How did I say it? What have I done? What have I invited them to?" It starts going through their minds. Now this guy was a little different. I told him, and he said, "Really?" Like he didn't believe me. I was a little shocked at first. He said, "Really?" I said, Yeah, that's what I do." He said, "Don't expect me to ever be there." I said, "Have I asked you to be there?" He said, "No." I said, "I'm not going to." And so we stayed friends. And we kept talking. And we kept doing things. And I never once invited him to come to this church. Never once. But I was friends with him. They did stuff for us. We did stuff for them. Our daughters were friends. One day he was going to be doing something. And I said, "Hey, I'd like to come watch you." And I went and I watched. And the next Sunday, he showed up at church. Never asked him. His family's been here ever since. That was way back when the church first started. And it totally, radically changed the way that I thought about reaching out to people. Because I always thought there had to be some kind of hard sell. That there had to be something that I had to know these bullet points in my minds of things that I had to say, and then be ready for every one of their responses and be able to... And it's really not like that. It's really not like that. All it is just showing the love of Christ. It's just being Christ-like in front of people. And when the time comes, when it happens, it'll happen. That leads us to the next point. The first one was reach out, and the second one was wait for their decision. Don't rush it. Don't rush it. The time is short. I realize that. Nobody knows when Jesus is coming back. We are on a limited time schedule. But the deciding factor of whether somebody comes to know Christ does not totally lie on you. You have responsibility to share His love, to share His story, to share what He's done in your life. But it's up to that person to make a decision. And it's up to God to convict them, and any judging that needs to take place, that's all on Him. That's not us. We just love people. And loving means waiting. Love is what? Patient. Love is kind. God called us to love people. Part of loving them is giving them the time to make that decision. The article said persistence is important, but you don't want to hound them. This is a secular Forbes article. And I added this: consistency is even more important. Not being consistent in asking and inviting them, but being consistent in living a Christian life. When you go back to what Paul was saying, remember Paul said, you sum it up by saying he was all things to all men. Whatever he needed to be, that's what Paul was. But there was a qualifier in there. He said, I do not ignore the law of God, and I obey the law of Christ. So he never went into a place where he would be overstepping his convictions or going into a place where he knew he was sinning. But he would be everything he could to people while still obeying the law of Christ. Consistency is important. If you want your friends and your family to come to know Him, you have to live like Him. It's hard. That's what it takes. You have to reach out. You have to wait for their decision. This is the one that everybody fears. This one right here. Dealing with rejection. What if it doesn't go my way? Well, this is what the Forbes article says. It says, don't just give up and walk away. You may be able to reach out again in the future. The really good salespeople don't regard no as a door slammed shut for eternity. They view it as a not now. Be gentle and be kind. That's how you make a sale. So how do we put that into sharing Christ? Marketing Jesus, if you will. How do we put that into that realm? Well, if you share your story, or you share where you go every Sunday when you don't show up at a ball game, or where you are every Sunday when you don't do the things that everybody else is doing. When you share, I go to church because I believe in Christ and it's part of my church family. I love those people, and that's what we do every Sunday. When they say, don't expect me to ever walk through those doors, don't think, well, they're never going to walk through the doors. They're just not going to walk through the door tomorrow. But when you live a consistent life in front of people, dealing with the rejection isn't really all that hard. Because you've taken the pressure off of yourself anyway. You know it's God's job. All you're doing is living the life that God called you to do. And so you don't give up on people just because they said no. You don't give up on people just because they don't want to do the things that you do. You just love them anyway. You just love them the same way that you loved them before that conversation came up. And trust me, it'll come up again. And they might say, not now, again. It may come out as no, but it's not now. So you just wait. You just wait. And you're gentle and you're kind. That means when they say, don't expect me to ever come to church, you don't say, well, then have fun in hell. Not that any of you would ever say that. But you be gentle with people. It's okay. It's okay. The final thing in this article, it talked about closing the deal. Closing the deal. And this is where Matthew 28 comes in. Jesus said, now go and make disciples. This article said, don't think your work is done once you close the deal. Once somebody comes to know Christ, your work is just beginning. Your work is just starting because it's your job. Listen to me. It's your job to disciple them. You may be thinking in yourself, I'm not even discipled myself. Well, it's your job. Disciple them. Disciple them. That means teach them the ways of Christ. How do you teach them? Well, you can tell them, that's good, but the bigger lesson is going to be in watching you live out that Christ life. Watching you not get angry. Watching you not blow your temper. Watching you be the person that you are supposed to be. And in all of that, knowing that you will mess up, and knowing that when you do mess up, you show them that you can just go right back and you can ask for forgiveness. And you will pick up and take off from where you've left off. We make it really complicated. It's really not that hard. You position yourself as a resource and you can show them that you care about them. When someone knows you serve God, you are the one they are going to call when everything falls apart. It's just the way it is. When everything goes down the tube, they're going to call you. Why? Because they know you're not going to tell anybody else. They know you're not going to gossip about it behind their back. They know that you're going to help them and you're going to give them sound advice, not just what you might do in the situation, but you're going to try to give them advice that you think God would want them to do. You're going to pray with them about it. You're going to offer to help them in any way that you can, because that's what being a Christian is all about. And people know that. They know what phony Christians are and they know what real Christians are. And if you are a real Christian in front of people, you are going to be able to close the deal and you're going to be able to go beyond that closing. You're going to be able to show yourself approved. You're going to be able to show yourself as someone they can turn to, as someone they can lean on. So I got a couple of questions for you. Number one, how well are you marketing Jesus? If Jesus were a product and you were selling it, would anybody buy it from you? Would they believe you? Or would they say, no, your house stinks? What? Would you be able to sell it? Is it something you use? Is it something that you rely on? Is it something that is vital in your life? If so, you're on the right track. If not, this is your day you get it right. My second question is this. If you are able to market Jesus and you think somebody would buy it from you, you think you could convince somebody, and my second question is, are you doing Do you know what a salesperson that does not sell does? They starve. And they die off. Salespeople work almost exclusively off a commission. You only make money if you're selling. Your job is to make disciples, and you only make disciples if you're sharing Jesus. Are you sharing Him, and how are you sharing Him? I've tried to make this as light as possible, but really this is what it's all about. This is what we're called to do, to make disciples. To share with our family and friends what Jesus has done in our lives so that we can see that happen in them.